So, you got the right mic on? Hello, testing?
Yeah.
All right, I represent the Fredericton Anti-Poverty Organization, and I'm here giving a presentation also as part of the Social Justice Coalition. And as I understand it, you already have this presentation. I'm the coordinating and one of the founding members of the Fredericton Anti-Poverty Organization. We have been around since 1983. That was the year that the government of Richard Hatfield initiated the first government-wide systemic cuts to services that we have now come to accept and expect with each successive Liberal and Conservative government. That's 28 years of cutbacks, so we're used to this presentation. In our view, budget cuts, it's time that they were viewed as bad management, and 28 years of them should be viewed as bankruptcy. There is a symbiotic relationship between the people and the economy that must be upheld for the economic model to make any sense in a sustainable way, and it goes like this. It's not only what you can do for the economy, but it's what the economy can do for you. And it's on the latter side of the axiom that the problem lies. What has this economic model done for New Brunswickers but give away resources and mire the people and their government in debt and poverty? You know, this is a position of weakness when you talk about budget cutbacks with every new mandate. And it's time we heard something a little different. We're a member of the Common Front for Social Justice that has made presentations to this committee in both Moncton and Bathurst. The presentation confronts the previous government's idiotic income tax giveaways, stresses the importance of better social policies to meet the needs of the unemployed and those on state assistance, as well as the need for pay equity in the private sector. The Common Front's presentation closes with a plea that if this new government is going to cut again, as have all other governments before it, please try to make the cuts fair. So for those who are not at the Moncton and Bathurst meetings, I will reiterate the Common Front's recommendations to Finance Minister Biggs just so that we're all on the same page. There are 5 of them. 1, don't cut the services and programs which help poor people. Keep raising the minimum wage. Put money in the next budget for increases to welfare rates. Discontinue the income tax cuts for individuals and corporations which were voted in 2009. And don't raise the HST. But as far as the Fredericton Anti-Poverty Organization is concerned, we shouldn't even be talking about cuts. We should be laying the groundwork to change the economic model. There is no economic security in the present model. There is no security in filling the shelves with products and food from outside the country while producing nothing here at home. We are hostage to an international finance situation that is out of our control. We should be here today talking about building a core economy for New Brunswickers, instead of talking cutbacks driven by our slavery to an export-dependent economy. There is certainly an economic challenge to be faced here in New Brunswick, but it is bigger than the debt problem. It's the very idea of financing the present by borrowing from the future. The practice is equivalent to lemmings heading for the cliff. In our case, the people of New Brunswick and the future generations who will be stuck with paying the bills are the lemmings. We, seem to exist for the benefit of the economy rather than the economy existing for the benefit of the people. We need a government and a political party that would help the people instead of the corporations. We need a government and a political party that gives us strength of a home economy rather than being hostage to other countries. There is no strength in economic dependency, whether you are a person on welfare or a government in hock up to its $9.2 billion eyeballs. This debt is not the fault of the people who have accepted 28 years of cutbacks. It's the fault of the 2 political parties and the economic model that they have supported all these years. It's the model that's bankrupt, and it's bankrupting our people. I'd also like to speak very briefly about the connection between the economy and the environment, which has not been mentioned, I don't imagine, anywhere. In 2010, New Brunswick experienced several unprecedented weather incidents. Only 2 months ago, our family cottage on the province's north shore, the Bay of Chaleur, nearly floated out to sea. When the rising tide came within inches of picking it up off its supports, we were lucky. The neighbors lost their breakwater. Nobody in the area can recall seeing such widespread devastation caused by flooding. There have been 6 of these once-in-a-century events in the last 3 years. This same situation manifested itself throughout the province's northeastern coastal areas and in southern New Brunswick, St. George especially, where the damage is yet to be calculated. What is the connection between the economy and these disturbing weather patterns? Global warming. I'm very afraid that if this government does not act now, we will see more and more of these frightening incidents and their effect on our economy, and will be far more devastating than washed-out bridges and cottages knocked off their foundations. It will be the end of a way of life that has passed, that has been based for more than 100 years, and especially so in the last 60 years, since the beginning of the post-war baby boom, on a borrow till you sink, shop till you drop economic model. It's time. The short-term fixes were dependent on a long-term view that is not smothered by debt, and that takes the economy and ecology together, because one of the inconvenient truths is that the ecology trumps the economy. It's not the other way around. It's time we have a government that approaches from a position of strength because it knows what to do to strengthen our economy, rather than from a position of weakness because they don't know what else to do except cut back because they're hostage to international finance. That's the presentation done by the Anti-Poverty Organization. I would like to say that in reiterating the environmental impact and the consideration of the environment, all the scientists, major scientists in the world, agree with what I'm saying, if I may make such a bold claim. And that to not begin to use the environmental situation as a basis for developing your economic position and future viewpoint is to miss the boat, because there are many, many jobs that can be created in trying to deal with our economic problems. Instead of having our forests, for example, sitting idle, people should be out there cleaning them up. If we had a biomass energy producer at the moment, we could be feeding that, and it could help us on our grid, and also help to produce many jobs. Instead of people sitting idle, you have the first column there where you have all sorts of people and no way to employ them. You begin to think of ways to employ them. There's lots of ways to employ them. Once you begin to realize that you have to move your economy away from the borrow till you sink, shop till you drop model. You know, an HST, the only thing that HST is good for is a landfill, because it keeps all them plastic Donald Ducks out of there. You know, they're going to be rising to the surface of our soil long after we have morphed into another being, you know, hundreds of thousands of years. So anyway, the point I want to make is that instead of just viewing the economic problem in terms of what short-term cutbacks do we make, how do we get ourselves to a position of balance so these international financiers will gracefully lend to us again so that we can do it all over again. We have to begin to build a core economy that makes New Brunswickers dependent on what its province can produce, not what we can import from everybody else and go into debt to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. And I agree. We need to establish an economy that's sustainable here. The whole North American model is a problem in terms of the respect that you point out. And I'd be more than willing to have meetings with yourself on specific areas that you think we should look at developing in terms of assessing. You mentioned biofuels or biomass and how we might generate some opportunity here. You know, we can sit down and go through some stats and figures and try to get some justification around those to see if there's some real traction there. Because we're not going to save ourselves in prosperity. There's no myth about that. Would you agree though that we can do better with what we have?
Depends on how you want to use what you have.
What do you think?
Well, for example, if you're going to use it just, to continue to run up more debt. I mean, it was $2.1 billion when Hatfield made the first big systemic cuts on his first budget in 1983, spring of 1983. It was $2.1 billion. Now it's close to $9 billion. And, you know, the same thing has been said with every mandate of every successive government, and that is that we are going to balance the books. You know, we're not going to have an economy that drains it to this extent. But in fact, we have. It's been all this time, 28 years. And we hear it over and over and over again. And, you know, it's difficult as a voter to realize that every time I'm electing a government, it's going to be approaching me from a position of weakness. It's going to be saying the same thing. Whether it blames the government beforehand for misspending or misallocating funds, it's continually caught in the same financial trap. And I don't see anybody trying to rebuild any kind of core economy for New Brunswick. We sold it all out. You know, how many farms do we have left out of the 40,000 we had in 1956?
Yeah, the challenge we have is certainly looking at, you know, how do we compete in this world of the global economy? And you can't build walls around your province and expect to survive on it.
Yes, but you don't sell out your ability to produce a core economy that people can rely on for the sake of being part of some kind of global economy that really is just run by international banks, of which we owe everything to.
So our focus is, you know, government has grown since the early 70s, from, let's say, I think the number was somewhere around 79, we had around 10,000 people working with the government. We have 48. We still have 750,000 people. So, you know, there's